my story began the day that I was born. No, I'm just kidding. My story begins on a Sunday morning whenever I was 28 years old. I wake up and I try to stand up, get out of bed. Whenever I do, I face plant the wall and I ride it to the floor. That typically doesn't happen for me, so I was like, I'm going to try this again. So I get myself up, get back on the bed, and the same exact thing happens. And so at this point in time, I'm like, well, something's going on. I need to ask for help. So whenever I went to talk, I didn't talk very well. Had issues with being able to speak. And so me being young and dumb and deciding that I didn't want to pay ER prices, I decided I was going to wait until the next day to go see my PCP. I'd worked for the University of Tennessee Medical Center for the past 8 years up to that point. And so I knew the ER prices. I was not about to go pay those. So wait, go to the next day, go see my PCP. And my PCP takes one look at me and says, you are healthy and what you've got is vertigo. And so I'm going to send you to a physical therapist. They're going to do the Epley maneuver on your head and you're going to be great. That's going to adjust the crystals in those little tubes in your ear and you're going to be just fine. So I do that. Nothing changes. So I end up going to my PCP 4 times in a 6-week span. I go see an ear, nose, and throat specialist twice in that 6-week span. And I go to physical therapy 3 times in that 6-week span. Nothing's changing. I can't work. I can't drive. I can't speak. And my equilibrium is shot. And so the best way I can describe it is I'm walking forward, and if I had my eyes closed, it felt like I was floating straight into the sky. And so if I wasn't looking at something whenever I was walking, I would walk in a circle if I didn't have something to focus on. That's the only way that I could walk in a straight line. So after about 6 weeks, I've got a buddy of mine that lives in Nashville. He's a PA, physician assistant in Nashville. And he goes, hey, Hail Mary, why don't you get a glucometer delivered to the house, check your blood sugar level and see what's going on. I've never had blood sugar dysregulation a day in my life. So I was like, you're reaching, straws there. I don't think this is going to be the case. But sure, I've got nothing to lose. My quality of life is miserable. So get the glucometer, I sit down, and I check my blood sugar. It's sitting at 996. For those of you that don't know, your blood sugar as a normal metabolically healthy individual shouldn't go above about $1.80, and that's after 4 scoops of ice cream and 3 donuts. Your body should do a good job of keeping that well below 200. So I'm at 996. I'm like, there is absolutely no way. I've got sugar on my finger. Sugar on my finger. And so I'm going to wash my hands, try it again. So by the time that I get back from doing all that, check it again, we're at 1001. So I knew I couldn't avoid the ER prices this time. So I get someone to drive me to the ER. I get to the ER. I almost get dismissed again. I said my blood sugar is dysregulated. And they're like, okay, have a seat. I turn the glucometer around. Then they panic. And so then they get me back. They do all the poking, the prodding, the testing, all that good stuff. And the doctor comes in. She's got this very somber look on her face. And she goes, hey, I hate to be the one to tell you this. You're a type 1 diabetic. It's late onset. And we suspect that you've had a stroke. And so sure enough, I get that CT scan, scarring, left temporal lobe. And your left temporal lobe, speech, balance. That's what it's there for. That's why I couldn't talk, why I couldn't walk. And so I get the message of this is going to be a tough life. The average type 1 diabetic lives 10 to 15 years less than the rest of the population, and there's nothing you can do to control this. Because she looked at me like I was crazy because I smiled when I got the diagnosis. I was like, yes, there's something. I'm going to work on that. No, you have no power here. The power is not yours to have. You can't do anything about this. You can't help out with your blood sugar dysregulation. You're going to live 10 to 15 years less than the rest of the population. Buckle up, enjoy. Take your insulin. Here's some metformin, and have a happy life. Now, granted, it was softball. It wasn't that extreme, but softball to me like that. So, of course, you get something like that, and you're like, okay, well, I'm a victim. And I lived in the victim's mentality for a few weeks. I come across a podcast. It was a Joe Rogan podcast, and there was this pharmacist on there, and the pharmacist was specifically talking about utilizing functional medicine principles in order to help heal strokes. And I was like, oh, well, that's someone with a baby stroke. I've had a big boy stroke, and so that's not going to apply to me. And so a few more weeks pass, and it comes across my brain again, and I'm like, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. I'm miserable. At the time, I was doing MMA, I was doing jiu-jitsu, I was playing basketball, I was working out all the time. I was very physically fit, and I went from that to nothing. And it was killing me. So I was like, what do I have to lose? let me try this crazy woo-woo science here of getting back to actually eating what God made. So give that a try. Within 6 weeks, my aphasia from my stroke, gone. I'm speaking normal again. I'm playing basketball. I'm back in jiu-jitsu. I'm working again. I'm driving again. No problems. And of course, there was a whole healing process that had to happen from this, because once I started doing that, my blood sugar level started stepping down pretty rapidly. And for any of you that have ever had a higher blood sugar level or just a hypoglycemic event or a low blood glucose event, you know that the second it drops, you feel like crap. So I was going from 700 to 600, and that felt like death. And then over the next couple of months, it would go from 6 to 5, 5 to 4. And it was a very slow, gradual process to where I balance out now between 120 and 150, which is great for a type 1 diabetic. So I became a believer. And I was like, you know what? There's actually something to this. It worked. And so then I'm like, okay, there must be a lot of people talking about this. There's got to be a lot of people involved in this. There must be a lot of type 1s that have a bunch of information on this. I go on the interwebs. I'm checking Facebook. I'm checking blogs. Everybody's a victim. No one has any good idea of what's going on. And it's all horrible messaging again and again and again and again. And it's so frustrating because the answer is right there. So much like what Erica was talking about, I did the same thing. Okay, if no one's doing it, I'm going to do it. So then I go back to school at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in New York. I did my mobile. I didn't actually go to New York because if anyone's from New York, I apologize, but I don't know why you'd want to be there. But that being said, went back, and then I started working in functional medicine. That's where I met Erica. You've already heard her talk about that part of the story. And then we decided to take on the burden ourselves of owning our own functional medicine business. And that's where Chronically Healthy came from. So the reason we always want to tell these stories is because we have lived it. We know the pain. We know what you're going through. This is not someone that's had a silver spoon life that is up here saying, well, you should do this. Hey, we've never had to worry about it ourselves, but you should do it. We've seen it happen time and time again. Not only that, everything that we're about to tell you, we live the same life. So we know what it is. So thank you guys for being here. Without further ado, let's hop into the 7 deadly sins of health.
Yeah. So the reason why we decided to call it 7 deadly sins is not because we're saying everyone here is a moral failure. Not at all. Okay. These are all pitfalls that we have fallen into because of our modern life, our modern environment that basically creates the health crisis that we're seeing today. And so becoming aware of what in our environment that we take for granted is just normal. If you're aware of that, you can actually start fighting that environment and restructuring your life in a way that is how your genes expect you to live. And that is not what the current modern environment is. So we're going to go into each one of these and explain how that environment is creating the disease that we're seeing and what exactly you can do about it.
All right, guys. First on the list here, let's talk about gluttony. So whenever I mention gluttony, I'm not talking about calories. That's not what I'm talking about here. So whenever we're talking about gluttony, I want to start talking about the way that we've been duped. Who here enjoys getting taken advantage of by big business? Show of hands. Nobody? I agree. So has anyone here ever heard of the bliss point? Okay, good. So the bliss point, what this is scientists will go through and make a food item that is so good. It might be salty, it might be sugary, it might have a certain mouthfeel to it, and you can't put it down. Has anyone here ever eaten Pringles? Has anybody here ever eaten an entire can of Pringles? Exactly. Now, I challenge you, can you do the same thing with ribeye steak? If you have a ribeye steak, say we have 10 ounces, can you eat 20 ounces of ribeye steak? Some people maybe. There's the guy that does the hot dog eating contest, and he can eat a lot. But for us normal individuals, you eat a ribeye steak, and your body says, that's enough nutrition. It's not nutritionally hollow. There's actually a lot of amino acids and fatty acids and minerals and vitamins in this thing. We're good. We're going to send out the right signal to the body to then say, stop eating. That doesn't happen whenever you eat these foods, such as Oreos, Pringles, your Lay's brands, your General Mills, your Kellogg's, your Frosted Mini Wheats. That doesn't happen at the same level as whenever you eat something that's nutritionally dense. But these scientists, they go through and they will take a control group of people, they will make a food item, hand it to them. Was that perfect? No. What did it need to be perfect? Okay, let's go back to the laboratory, fix that food item, and we're going to come back in and give it to you again. Was that perfect? Yeah, that's pretty dang close. And what happens is these food items that you eat, such as the Pringles, I'm picking on Pringles, but such as the Pringles, whenever you eat a Pringle, does it last in your mouth very long? No, it's gone quick. And so you get that instant dopamine hit in the brain, but that food's gone. And so it dissolves very quickly. So you're eating a lot of that food, and your stomach, your intestines, your body, your hormones, it's not getting the right signaling because you're not actually giving nutrition to the body. If you look at the nutrition label, it might say fortified, where they had to add things back in because they've taken so much out of it, but still, it's not nutritionally dense whatsoever. And so that's the first point I want to make whenever we're talking about gluttony. You guys have been duped by these big companies, General Mills, Lay's, Kellogg's. They have tricked you into eating their food items, telling you that it's healthy. Luckily, the food pyramid, it's been flipped, which is great. But prior to that, you were doing exactly what the food pyramid said, and they were playing into that, and they were hijacking you and making you think, number one, mentally, that you were doing the right thing, and number two, that you were eating something that was healthy. And so the next point I want to make is going to be what these food items do to us. So whenever I'm going to be talking about insulin resistance, has anyone here ever been diagnosed as a pre-diabetic, a diabetic, or been told that their insulin is elevated? Yes. So one of the first things that happen whenever I mention insulin resistance, most people say, oh, my blood sugar's fine. The thing about insulin, that hormone can rise in the background of your health for 10 to 15 years before it reflects in your A1C. Now, the thing about it is, and I'll pose this question, is prediabetes and diabetes and insulin resistance, are they three different diseases? Anybody? No, they are not. They are the same disease on a sliding scale. Once you get the full-blown diagnosis, once your A1C hits 6.5, then you are a full-blown type 2 diabetic. That means more cells in your body are insulin resistant. Whenever you're insulin resistant or your insulin's elevated before you hit the pre-diabetic range, the same thing's still happening, it's just not as many cells have been affected. And so really quickly, I briefly want to break down what insulin resistance actually is, because whenever you get that diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, they tell you that your blood sugar's off, but it's actually a metabolic disease. It's a metabolic issue that actually happens at your mitochondria, which are a little organelle inside of your cell. And for anybody that's taken a biology class, what do they say about mitochondria? It's the powerhouse of the cell. The way that it's the powerhouse of the cell is it creates ATP, a little bit of ADP. That's the currency the cell takes in order to be able to produce energy so that cell can do its job. So with insulin resistance, has anybody here seen I Love Lucy, the show? Perfect. Has anyone seen the Chocolate Factory episode of I Love Lucy? Okay, so your mitochondria is Lucy and Ethel in this scenario. So there's a little bit of chocolate coming down, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of monomer of glucose coming down the track there. And then they take it, they wrap it up, package it, and send it out to be consumed. And then it comes a little bit faster. And then they're kind of keeping up with it, but it's getting really hard. Then a lot of the chocolate pieces start coming in. And then they can't keep up with the load anymore. That's what's happening with insulin resistance. Your mitochondria is not listening to insulin anymore because it's been so bombarded with glucose that it says, this is too much for me. I can't handle it. My insulin binding sites that are around your cell are no longer listening to that insulin. So then your body only knows one way to get rid of glucose. It's going to keep pumping out a lot of insulin, and your glucose is going to keep rising because the cell isn't accepting that occupant anymore. And that's why type 2 diabetes, if there's not an intervention made, tends to get worse over time. So these food items that we're eating that I was just talking about, those food items are normally higher in carb. And so type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, it doesn't have to come from food alone. You can sleep or lack thereof your way into it, or you can stress your way into insulin resistance. But what typically happens, the largest lever here, is going to be food. And so these foods, they're nutrient hollow. They don't have a lot of nutrients in them. Your amino acids, your fatty acids, your vitamins, your minerals, the basic building blocks of life. So they're hollow, but they're really high in sugar. And you're eating a lot of it. Once again, we can eat a whole sleeve of Pringles. That's going to pull your blood glucose up day after day, hour after hour. Your body keeps producing a lot of insulin, and those cells stop listening to it. So these, they leave you fed, but not nourished. So whenever I'm talking about gluttony, that's what I mean, is just the insulin resistant state. And once again, guys, I'm not blaming you. We have all been tricked. The front of those labels, they say heart healthy, cholesterol friendly. But then you flip it over and look at the back, there is nothing nutritionally dense about that item whatsoever. So that's it on gluttony. I'll get off my pulpit here. Now,
all right, sloth. So we hear this all the time. Everyone, Americans are more sedentary than ever. And it's very important to know. And now, am I glad that I don't have to go out hunting for my food every single day? Absolutely. That's great that we don't have to do that. But over just the last 50 years, Americans have gone from sitting 3 to 5 hours a day to 9 to 12 hours a day if you're an office worker, which is just crazy. And then even in the homesteading space, if you have a farm, there's a lot of things, a lot of tools you can use to make obviously things easier so that you're not having to move your body and exert yourself as much. And so even though you're probably getting out more than the typical office worker working on the farm, there's still ways that you can be sedentary even in that environment. And the problem with this is most people look at this as like, oh, well, if you're not moving, then you're just not expending calories. And then that's why we're gaining weight, right? The real problem is what it's doing to our muscle. Your muscle is not just something that helps move your body. It's actually an endocrine organ. An endocrine has to do with hormones. So it actually helps regulate hormones. It helps regulate your metabolism. And going back to the insulin resistance piece, muscle cells are the only cells that don't need insulin to be able to pull glucose. So it's essentially an insulin resistance hack. When you move your body, those cells are able to pull that glucose. They don't need insulin. The body doesn't have to pump out insulin to make the muscles do it. So you can actually pull that glucose without bringing up insulin, which is the cause of insulin resistance. So it's a great metabolic insulin resistance hack to be able to move your body. Now, most of us, there's gyms on every single corner, right? And if you're doing a workout every day or every other day, that's great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We love that. But I think we get into this idea that 45-minute workout, that hour workout negates the 8 to 12 hours that we're sitting all day. And there's a really cool doctor, Dr. Gabrielle Lyons. She does muscle-centric medicine. That's her whole thing that she focuses on. And she unfortunately dropped this bomb and said that basically that 45-minute workout does not negate the 8 hours a day. It's actually better for you if during those 8 hours that you're normally sitting, if you're getting up every hour on the hour and doing some air squats, right? Doing some 10 air squats. Movement many times throughout the day is actually going to be better for you than one block of time that you're moving your body. Now, that does not mean don't work out. I'm not saying that, but something to consider. If you feel like I don't have time to work out, or I'm too tired, I'm too inflamed, I'm too sick to work out, finding those moments in your day to move your body is going to be a huge input for your health. And then the other thing is timing on when you move your body is important. So if you decide to take a walk for 15 minutes after a meal, you're going to drop your glucose spike from that meal by 10 to 50%. So that's another way that you can hack your way out of insulin resistance just by moving your body. As we age, muscle becomes even more important. So Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, she works with the elderly, the aging community, and she talks about how we're not dying of old age, we're actually dying of sarcopenia, the wasting away of muscle. And most of us know of family members who basically they break a hip and that's the end for them, right? And they broke the hip in the first place because they were weak. And then also the less muscle you have and the less protein you're intaking, the less, strong those bones are going to be. So they break the hip and then they are trying to recover over the next couple of months and not moving, and they are wasting away, that muscle wastes away. And that's usually in the end what actually kills them, not old age. So again, this is something that our modern environment makes it so easy to not move, and makes it so difficult to actually find the time to move, that it's something to be aware of and take note of, to try to restructure your life, to just get up every hour, do those air squats, walk after a meal for 15 minutes, and see how much better you feel.
Another fun fact on muscle versus fat real quick. With fat, 1 pound of fat requires up to 5 miles of vasculature that your body has to create to feed it. Guess how much extra vasculature your body needs for muscle? None. It's already built into it. And so there's a lot of issues that come whenever we don't move muscle and we have more fat on the body. A lot of cardiovascular strain. Now the next one here, let's talk about wrath. Let's talk about stress. Who here has ever been stressed?
Mm.
Yeah. If anyone didn't raise their hand, I want to talk to you and I want you to tell me your secrets. But as far as that goes, stress, do what? Now I think everybody just about did. Whoever that person is, they need to make a course and they need to charge for that. But as far as wrath goes, as far as stress goes, we've got certain hormones in our bodies that will control other hormones. Cortisol is one of these. And so if I told you that you have the same stress response across any stress, would you believe me? Yes. There is not a different stress response you have. Now, to the level at which your body responds, if a bear comes through that door, all of our cortisol level is going to be sky high. We're going to get pretty worried about that. Now, if I get a work email and I've got something on there that someone's fussing at me about something or I've done something incorrectly, I'm also going to get stressed. It's the same response from the adrenal glands. You're going to put out cortisol, you're going to put out adrenaline, and it's going to start to shut other things down within the body. Because your body, whenever we're highly stressed, especially for a longer period of time, it shuts down production of your sex hormones. So for us dudes, our testosterone is going to drop whenever we have chronically high stress, if we don't de-stress. For females, those female sex hormones are going to get shut down. Now, another big thing here is nutrient deficiencies. And it doesn't mean that you're not eating enough food, but whenever we're stressed, your body, like say that bear is barreling down on me, my body could care less about digestion and sex hormone production and reproduction whenever a bear is chasing me. And so you're going to have a lot of vasoconstriction. Those veins and those arteries and those capillaries around your intestines, they're going to start to constrict. And it's going to shove your blood, that nutrient, to your more distal regions, to the big muscle groups of the body, in order to make sure that it's fight or flight. You can either run or you can fight the bear. I'd probably choose to run. But that being said, yeah, exactly. But as far as that goes, your body is shutting down production of those hormones, those sex hormones, and it's shutting down production of your digestion. Another thing that happens here is your thyroid hormone is in charge of a lot of your metabolism. What does your body not care about whenever you're running from a bear? Metabolism. And so your thyroid, your TSH specifically, thyroid stimulating hormone from the pituitary, is going to start to get downregulated whenever cortisol is high. Now, the problem is here in America, we tend to be at least a little stressed all the time. And that chronic little bit of stress is causing all those body processes to shut down, at least to some extent, every single hour of the day. So we wonder why our young men have testosterone levels below a 70-year-old in 1980. We wonder why a lot of females are losing their hair and their nails are getting brittle. And that's not the only, I'm not saying stress is the only thing, but as far as that goes, that's one of the contributing factors that go into this. So poor digestion, it also causes in a shorter period, a more acute stress, so say you're working out or you have just a stress that's here for 5 minutes and gone, it actually can do good things for the body. So not all stress is bad stress. If you stimulate your muscles, that is a stress, but it actually causes your body to have more anti-inflammatory markers put out rather than inflammatory markers. But I bet you guys can guess where I'm going with this. Whenever it's chronic, what do you think happens to the inflammation, to the immune system? It starts to rise. And you have more and more inflammation over time unless you're able to reduce that stress and that cortisol. And so cortisol, the last point that I want to touch on here is on the bottom there, you can see sleep complications. So sleep medicine is what I've done for the past 15 years. And with sleep, you've got multiple different stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage REM. And so stage 3 and stage REM are your deeper stages of sleep. Whenever you pick up a kid and you can take them from the couch to the bed and they never wake up, that's stage 3. You are comatose. And so those are the stages we want to get to. That's whenever your body goes back into anabolism, or building, rather than catabolism, or breaking down the body. Whenever we're chronically stressed, that cortisol being in control, do you think if a bear is coming through that door, I'm going to go to sleep? Not unless I'm a narcoleptic, and luckily I'm not. And so I hope you aren't either. That, or you're going to be the feast and the rest of us can get away. But as far as that goes, cortisol controls your body's ability to make melatonin from serotonin. And so if you're chronically stressed, that melatonin production is going to stay low. So then we're going to have all sorts of sleep complications from this. And of course, if we don't get sleep, if we can't rebuild, if we can't get our cell wall to rebuild itself, if we can't produce those hormones, what do you think happens to health? So Wrath, stress. Stress is a killer, and those are some of the ways that stress alone can cause you to have a much shorter lifespan.
Another thing on that heart disease section when it comes to stress. So with heart disease, did you know that 86% of heart attacks are actually caused by clots, not calcifications? So there's that CT scan you can get, calcium score to see if your arteries are clear. It's only going to show calcifications, okay? But 86% of heart attacks are caused by clots. And how stress plays a role in this is just like he was talking about with that bear. If you're about to be attacked by a bear, it's, you don't want to bleed out, right? If you're going to get injured. So your body, when you're stressed, actually increases the clotting factors in your blood, which is why people who are stressed end up with the heart disease down the line. So just another reason to try to work on stress.
Yeah.
Now everyone's stressed.
Yeah, right. We're stressed about stress. But yes.
All right. So pride kind of works in two different ways here. So when I talk about pride, with all the information that is out there, there's a million different health gurus out there telling you that they have the way to be able to fix your health, and they can become very dogmatic in their one way, right? Or you may see this with your own primary care physician. We are not against conventional medical system and doctors. They are doing the best they can in the system that they have been taught in. But how many people have had this experience where, maybe your cholesterol's up and you're like, well, I want to work on this with diet. I've read that if I do this and this, I can bring my cholesterol down. I don't need that statin. And they look down their nose at you and they're like, well, where'd you get that? A book? Dr. Google? I've actually heard that from clients tell me their doctors have said that to them, right? That is a pride issue in your health expert that you're going to. When it comes to your health, you are the CEO sitting at that table of your health. You get to decide who sits there and who's part of that team. You can fire that doctor. Everyone's afraid they're going to get fired from their doctor by not being compliant. They should be afraid of you firing them, okay? So that's the number one thing I look for in a doctor is, do they listen? Are they curious? I am totally okay with a doctor saying, I don't know about that. Let me look into that. Great. I will keep them on my roster for sure, right? So that's one way, and another thing on the doctor side of things is if they're ignoring patterns. That's something that when we see labs and everything, we get to see the pattern of what lifestyle changes are working and what not. If they're giving the same advice and their patients are all getting worse, why are they not seeing that pattern? That's pride coming into it, because they've been through, a lot of schooling and spent a lot of money on that. They must know better. Now, the same way we can do that to ourselves with our own health. So when we're following a certain program from like a health guru or whatever, right? Or following certain advice and it's not working for us and our body is giving those signals that, hey, this isn't right. But we decide to ignore it, or we think we know better, or that sort of thing. There's a lot of different things in the health space that it may not work for you, and it's okay to admit that and to try a new thing and listen to your body. One of the things that some people might not realize is, grains and, the Wonder Bread we get at the store, everyone knows that's probably not the best thing, right? The wheat has been heavily sprayed with pesticides, GMOs, glyphosate, all that stuff. We don't want that. But if we mill our own grain or if we make sourdough, I admit that's better. That's definitely better than Wonder Bread, right? But it still may not be right for you. You still might be having the bloating. You still might be having the autoimmune issues. You still might be gaining the weight. And so it's being able to step back and really listen to your body and be okay with admitting, like, this isn't right. I need to try to do something else.
All right. So envy. Has anybody ever looked at someone else in their life, or somebody on a computer screen or on a cell phone, and said, must be nice? They must have good genetics. They haven't had to deal with what I've had to deal with. They've got all the money in the world. They can afford it. Anybody? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so envy is something that, the way I want to talk about envy is, it's a very good platform. It's just like whenever you ask yourself something that's difficult. What am I inadequate in? What do I struggle with? Where am I not adequate? How am I not being a man for my family? How am I not being, my wife for my family? How am I not being the mom to my family? And you say, I don't know. That's a cut point. Your brain shuts it down. Psychologically, you've given yourself a wall. Boom. I don't have to think about it anymore because I said, I don't know. Envy does the same thing. And so envy gives you the excuse of, well, it must be nice for them. They've got the money, they've got the time, they've got the genetics. So therefore, I'm not even going to worry about making changes because my life has been so much more difficult than their life. My diagnosis is so much worse than their diagnosis. And so it gives you that comfortable little platform to stand on and say, I don't have to do anything because mine is worse than theirs. Because you're looking and it's that envy or that jealousy, and maybe it's not exactly that, but it's an excuse at minimum that you don't want to change your health. So, do I know? Yes, yes. Now the thing about it is you have complete control over your health. Now, if someone, say that somebody has stage 4 renal failure, are you going to reverse that? There is a very, very slight chance that you are able to reverse that. Very, very slight. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't still try. If somebody told me that if I had a pig on my back and I had to give it a piggyback ride every single day for the rest of my life, and I had a 5% shot at never having cancer, what do you think I'm doing? I'm giving a pig a piggyback ride my entire life because it gives me a 5% shot of not having cancer, a little bit more odds in my favor. And so with envy, that was one of the biggest things I wanted to hit on here, is comparing yourself to others. And the second point that I want to make is, who here has ever taken an ugly photo of themselves and put it on social media? Nobody. It's a highlight reel. So this person that says that they've got the answers and they've got the health and they got the washboard abs and everything's perfect, that's their highlight reel. You don't see their low points. They might have the same exact low points as you, but you're comparing your life to them and saying, must be nice, as opposed to seeing the bad things they go through. And maybe your life is better than theirs. Maybe your difficulties aren't as much as theirs, but you're comparing it to the highlight reel. And so that's something that it's either coming from a fear-based or kind of an excuse-based. But whenever you see someone doing something and you start comparing and saying, hey, I don't want to make the necessary change because they've got more or they've got less on their plate, rethink that and take your health seriously. Seriously, if I can speak English.
Yeah, and lust kind of comes into this too when we compare ourselves, and then we have a focus on our outward appearance when it comes to our health rather than the health of our physical bodies itself. So we're chasing a dress size, we're chasing that number on the scale. And in our desperation to chase that, we can jump into some things that are really, really unhealthy. And the big one right now is GLP-1s. GLP-1s are so popular. And I'm not, trying to look down on anybody who is taking that by any means. I mean, your doctor will put you on that so fast, it'll make your head spin. My sister actually just went to the doctor for a sore throat. And she got lectured about, why did you stop Wegovy last year? And she's like, well, it made me sick. And I didn't want, and she's like, and my brother actually works for Eli Lilly, which is really funny. They create Manjaro. We don't talk about certain things. But he was able to lose over 100 pounds on his own. She's like, yeah, my brother was able to do it on his own. I'd like to do that. And that nurse looked at her and was like, well, I mean, that's nice if you can do it on your own. So leaving her feeling desperate, like this was her only choice. And that's what that desperation can push you into that. And, GLP-1s, they're a lifelong drug. They don't tell you that necessarily, but in their own clinical trials, 50% of the weight loss is going to come from muscle. And we just talked about how important muscle is anyway. And so that's why when you stop the drugs, you gain the weight back just as fast, right? And then I work in x-ray. For the last 15 years, I was doing x-ray and CT. And when we were first starting out, I would work at a hospital for one day a week. That was it. And it's a small county hospital, okay, tiny. And the amount of people I saw coming into the ER because they had taken a GLP-1 and they hadn't had a bowel movement in 2 weeks was insane. And they will push through those symptoms because it's working. They're losing the weight. Meanwhile, they're nutrient deficient because that's what it's doing, is it's slowing down your digestive system so that you don't eat food. So you're starving yourself of nutrients. There's women in their 20s who are now being diagnosed with osteopenia in their 20s, which is so scary. We were giving a talk a couple months ago, and there were a lot of nurses in the crowd, and they were telling us that what they've seen is, if 50% of the weight loss is coming from muscle loss, well, guess what else is a muscle? Your heart. And the amount of heart attacks they've seen in young people from these GLP-1s. The other thing are nurses who work in the surgery in the OR. And if you're on a GLP-1, instead of 12 hours of having to go without any solid food, they're going to tell you to go 48 hours now, because they've start the surgery and they look and they've got a stomach full of food that's just sitting there rotting. And these drugs have such a draw because they're marketed as it's going to stop the food noise, right? It's going to stop the food noise. And that the problem is that we're eating too much. Well, we already talked about, it's not that we're eating too much, it's that we're eating too much of the wrong things, the things that have no nutrients, the things that make you addicted, that are literally engineered for you to be able to keep eating and not stopping. When we switch to whole nutrient-dense foods, those satiety hormones start working correctly. When you start moving your body more and building more muscle, then you've got that metabolic sink for that glucose to go into, right? And so there are, again, the only reason why we're talking about this is because the messaging now behind GLP-1s is there's nothing you can do. And that is just devastating for us to hear. And so we just want you to know there is 100% you are in control of your health.
And another fun fact on GLP-1s, since we're on that subject, does anybody know where they started? What the original formulation was? Well, It was for diabetes, which they've been out forever. They started developing this in the late 90s and then marketed it. 2006, it actually hit the market. But the actual formulation, like where it came from, how they discovered this.
Yep.
Now, it does make GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide, and glucagon. But there is no GLP in GLP drugs. There's no glucagon-like peptide. It's something completely different. Now, where they discovered this from, has anyone ever heard of the Gila monster?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The original formulation came from the venom of the Gila monster. Don't believe me on it? Google it right now, and it will tell you that the original formulation was based on Gila monster venom. Why? Because it was a paralytic. It paralyzed smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is what controls your bowel movements. And so that's where it started at, was the Gila monster venom. And so now, of course, it's nowhere near Gila monster venom, but that's where they got the idea from. And they synthesized it over the years until finally they made it safe enough for the general population to be able to have it, not just the diabetics. Yes. Mm-hmm. All right, last one here. Greed. So whenever I'm talking about greed here, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about greed to the extreme on your health. There are some individuals out there that will have so much greed with their health that they will forego so many aspects of their life. So would you guys agree that humans are a social creature? Yes, we have to have society around us, interactions, wholesome interactions with other people. One of the worst ways they punish prisoners is solitary confinement. Yes, because we inherently want to be around other people. We get things from that. We get safety. We get energy, whatever it might be. So it serves us in one way, shape, form, or fashion. What we found and what you see with some people that go the extreme opposite the direction with health is that they will get so dogmatic about their health that they will go to the gym for many, many hours, and they will forego dinners with the family. They'll forego time with the kids. They'll forego vacations. Same thing with biohacking. Biohacking is great. Sauna is phenomenal. 1 hour of sauna will beat 30 days worth of anti-inflammatory supplements. 1 hour. And so sauna is great. Red light therapy, phenomenal. Cold plunges, they're great. There's good signals that come from that. Your cold shock proteins. But what we don't want to do is get so greedy about all this and so dogmatic about it that we forego life. And so that's what I want to talk about here with greed and the relationships that we have with other individuals. Don't get so dogmatic about it, because we need both. Yes, we need health. Maybe we just need to walk. Don't discount walking, like what Eric was saying. You don't have to go to the gym every day. We don't have to lift iron every day. We don't have to build the muscle every day. Just a little bit of movement and focusing on the diet, nutritionally dense foods. But don't forgo what's happening here in America, where everybody's walking around with a cell phone thinking they're being social, and that could be anything but social. So make sure that you do focus on that and you don't get so in the weeds about health that it worries you or you get so concerned with it that you are foregoing the quality aspects of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, again, just highlighting now that you know and you can recognize these things in our environment, now you kind of know how you can restructure your life to fight this modern environment that is promoting disease. And something, we do when we work with people is we always start with like lab work. For example, we want to see exactly what's going on in your body. We can, with the gluttony thing, if you are insulin resistant, there's a reason why you're craving sugar. Oh, I just got a sweet tooth. No, if you have high insulin, those cells actually are not getting the energy that they need, and they're going to push you to look for more energy, and it's going to be in the form of sugar. And so gluttony, same thing with like stress and looking at the adrenal hormones and how it's affecting the rest of your hormones is going to be so important. We also want to make sure that everything is going to be personalized. So if anybody you're working with for your health, don't follow like a cookie cutter thing. Oh, you have Hashimoto's, we're going to do this because this is what everyone with Hashimoto's. No, you have a different gut microbiome. You have a totally different immune system. You have to have something that is much more personalized. So that is something that we work with all of our clients. Everything is going to be very personalized and based on data of what we see in the labs.
Now, and this is not us selling you guys. We just want to see you get healthy. That's the reason that we go around, we travel, and we give these talks. We just want you guys to know that your health is yours to own. It does not have to go through Chronically Healthy. But like Erica was saying, for any individual that you ever work with, some of the best things the number one thing is they should be handing your health back to you. You should be educated on your health so well that you can take it after a certain period of time and run with it. You're so educated on your body that you understand it and you can run with it and it's yours to own. You should drive that car. Someone can look at the GPS and tell you where to go, but you should be the one driving that car. And then another couple of points, and I believe Erica mentioned this earlier, with physicians or with anyone in your medical team, you want someone to be curious. They may not be the most intellectual individual, and they may not be the highest educated individual, but I will respect a doctor that looks at me and says, I don't know the answer to that, but let's figure it out together. And I will do my best. If I can't figure it out, I'll find someone that does. That's a good doctor. Stick with that doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time.
And so none of it permanent. And so health is on this continuum. If we keep doing what we're doing, it's going to keep getting worse. Or if we keep doing what we're doing, it's going to continue to get better. So I believe that God made us in a way that your body wants to heal over time. Yes, we do age, but age is a number. And yes, metabolism slows down. And yes, the cells don't reproduce as fast as what it once did. But that doesn't mean that the body can't heal. That doesn't mean that your hormones can't balance. You are in control of your health, and your body will respond in a positive manner the second that you take that health seriously. For example, the oldest individual we have on our roster right now is 89 years old. This man has been a diabetic for the past 40 years. He was 88 when he started with us. He's now 89. Guess who at 89 years old is no longer a diabetic? Mm-hmm. So age is not a reason that your health is declining.
Yep. Yeah, and just to kind of a quick overview of what we do, we always, when we work with someone, we start with a free root cause review. We're going to sit down with you, really go into a deep dive into your health, not just where you are right now, but everything that has led up to that point in your life, right? Because that puts you in the place you are now. We'll talk with you about possible root causes. We'll talk about what testing would be right for you to be able to pinpoint those root causes and what we would do to address those all within a 1-hour session. And then if you decide you want to get some testing done, we can get that testing done. We have that at our booth if you want to see what that looks like, an example of that. And getting testing done with us does not commit you to a program whatsoever. We want you to get some answers first. So if you get some answers from the labs and you're like, cool, I got the clarity I need, I can do this on my own, fantastic. That's why we designed it that way. But if you see it and you're like, whoa, I'm still overwhelmed, I need a little help here, that's where we can help you out after that. So that's our process. And then we have a functional medicine doctor who reviews all the labs, creates personalized care plans. And as your coaches, we are walking alongside you every single week for the first 6 weeks. You have 24/7 access to us. We meet bi-weekly throughout the rest of the program. And then we check your labs periodically, make sure we're heading in the right direction. Your body is going to tell us where we need to go next. So that's how we work with people. And so if you're interested in talking to us about a free root cause review, you can see us at our booth upstairs. We are doing an offer for this event that if you want to immediately jump into the labs, we'll still do that free root cause review. But if you want to get the labs ordered today, we can set that up for you. And we also have Equip Prime Protein. You'll get a bag of that and a Chronically Healthy mug from us if you decide to jump the line for this event. So, yeah.
Indeed. Now then, guys, we want to open it up to you all. Questions, thoughts, epiphanies. Hit us with your best. Yes, sir.